It is 6:30. I will call the Dayton Planning Commission meeting to order. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next up is roll call. The chair shall verbalize who is in attendance and who is absent. So,
Sergeant Brown in Demuth.
all right, there we go.
There we go.
And absent is
Crossland and Pressler.
Pressler.
So I believe Crossland plans on attending, but he will be late.
Can I make a request with the new AI? Can I get a list of the names?
Sure.
Just right here?
Yep.
Just to help
Help the memory, yep.
the memory. Sometimes I forget when we're reading through so many things. All right, number 3, role of Planning Commission. We'll just, it's on the agenda and it's there. Number 4, approval of agenda. Anything to add or change?
Sure. So I had mentioned in an email, I'm going to make an addition onto 10B as a discussion of a Scannell project.
Is the applicant going to be online for that, or do you
No.
know? So it doesn't really matter if we make it 10A or B? Okay.
Nope. You
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended, adding item 10B.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Brown and a second by Sargent. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 5, consent agenda. Minutes from February 6th. I was not present at, I was at that one.
No.
I was not at that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Guess I have to second it.
Motion by Brown, second by Sargent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. All right, item number 6, open forum. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. Come on forward.
I wanted to talk, Marcia Grover, 11320 Fernbrook Lane in Dayton. I just wanted to talk about the intersection of 113th and County Road 121. I don't know if you guys are ever familiar with that, but you have 2 very narrow roads with no shoulders intersecting. It's a very small intersection. You have 2 two-lane roads, and just last month, the garbage truck northbound waiting for traffic to clear so he could make a left turn on 113th was stopped on 121. The car behind him with a woman driving with 2 small kids in the back seat stopped, but the car behind her did not, resulting in a rear-end collision. Both cars were towed away and appeared to be totaled. Also, our mailbox is at that intersection, and there's a street sign there. The traffic, which includes big semis with long trailers carrying huge earth-moving equipment, have a hard time navigating that corner, especially if there's a car sitting on 113th trying to get on 121. Due to Sundance and all the new houses back there are cars sitting there most of the time waiting to get onto 121. Now imagine this scenario. A car sitting there in the eastbound lane of 113th and a semi with a long trailer and heavy equipment on it trying to turn onto it coming from the north. The semi on 121 has to come to a full stop and wait for the car on 113th to leave. The car can't go because the semi is blocking his view. You may think, well, the driver should go because the semi is also blocking the traffic. Not true. People behind the semi pull out and pass in a no passing zone because they think they're special and they don't have to stop and wait. So now all lanes on 121 have traffic going in the same direction. If one of those cars pulls off of 113th, there's certainly going to be an accident, and we've seen several close calls. The same is true if there's a semi on 113th waiting to get onto 121. The rig needs both lanes to get on, so he must wait until there is a big break in the traffic in both lanes of 121 before he goes. Just last week, we saw a car pull out from behind a semi, pull up alongside the semi in the wrong lane, and then turn right onto 121, crossing in front of the semi that's sitting there waiting for the traffic to clear. Also, about 2 weeks ago, there must have been something going on at Sundance because we counted 79 cars coming off of 113th onto 121 on a Monday at 1:30 in the afternoon. The line stretched as far to the west as your eyes could see. It took them 10 minutes to get all the way through the intersection. There must have been something going on, I don't know. Imagine if you had a semi coming from the north waiting for 79 cars to pull out onto 121. We've seen the street sign get knocked down. We've seen our mailbox get knocked down. Right now, that street sign looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and if it gets hit one more time, it's going to come down again. This intersection is not suitable for these big rigs with earth-moving equipment to be coming around that corner. And you have to think of an alternate route for those big rigs entering before DCM starts his project. Maybe the rigs need to go up to Rush Creek. It's a wider intersection, much wider. Maybe 117th, that's wider too. Or maybe they should start with 114th and put in like a dirt road there so that the machinery can get in there. At any rate, 113th intersection is not able to handle the traffic that Dean's build-out will cause. I'm trying to think of alternatives for an obviously bad intersection. I'm trying to help you do your job. Your job, may I remind you, is not to help the developer make as much money as possible. They know the property and they know what the rules and the codes are. Your job is to enforce the rules and the codes of this city. Your job is to protect the citizens that are already living in this area. Oh, and by the way, have you approved the DCM plan?
No.
No. Okay. You need to consider resolution of the lot sizes, which most of them are really small. You need to consider, he says he's not going to build the commercial, but he says, how long? A month, 6 months, a year, 5 years? And the traffic problem is really something you need to consider. The roundabout and the garages for those people on Fernbrook Lane are, you're going to build the alley, but that's all fine. But how are they going to move their garage and their driveway? This is a big cost for them, not to mention the sewer and the water. Please reassess all these things before you approve that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here for open forum? All right, moving on to item 7, council update.
So for March 11th, it was a pretty thin agenda. South Island Lake Road's getting a full mill and overlay this summer. That was to approve plans and specs for it and to go out for bids. And then we did work more on the goal setting. Yeah, that was it for the 25th, or the 11th. 25th, we had a work session with the Park Commission over most of it was over, their accomplishments, but there was some discussion on a community park, what it meant, and how we should be setting ourselves up. We basically said that staff would at least keep an eye open for land in the 40 to 80 acre range. And if it was reasonable, we would jump on it, but there didn't seem to be very much urgency from anybody, any of the commission or the council. Up and in that concept plan, the bulk of that discussion was on what we were doing with the property on the east side, how we were going to get access to it. And that was most of that discussion. Parkway neighborhood final plat, that was to resolve some of the financing details. Like I said, that was a final plat, so that went through. We did change the public notification requirements for public hearings. There's a threshold. If it hits that, it will go out to, is it 1,200 feet?
Well, quarter mile, so 13
something. Okay. Yeah, those small things, it would stay at the 500-foot level.
Yes.
And then we had the Ag 3 zone. Pretty much got approved as to what you guys had seen. I believe, yeah. That's pretty much what you guys had approved is what we had approved. And then we just had a vote to accept the strategic plan that we've been working on. So, and that was it.
All right, any questions or clarification? All right, item 8, public hearing, Parkway neighborhood, phase 2.
There's a couple people, but Michael is online.
Okay, great. So I believe the developer is online on Zoom. So Michael, when you've got something, if you want to raise your hand, the architect, I believe, will be joining us shortly.
Do you want to get him?
Sure, if you want. Yeah. I know he's multitasking.
Sure.
So this is not a new project, obviously. You saw this a month ago. So the Parkway neighborhood is located at the intersection of Interstate 94 and Dayton Parkway. It is a 3-phase project. So phase 1 is a 180-unit apartment building. Phase 2 is 273 units of apartments and townhomes. And phase 3 is to be determined. So generally speaking, when we went through the concept plan, the phase 3 was going to be similar to phase 1 of roughly 150 to 200 units. So tonight we're focused on phase 2. So this is a preliminary plat approval for phase 2 as well as site plan approval. Phase 2 is 14 acres, and as I mentioned before, it's 273 apartments and townhomes. These are all rentals. Critical issues for this, the property is zoned GMU 5 or General Mixed Use 5, and also has a planned unit development. With the PUD, there's allowed flexibility from the city code, or we refer to these as deviations from code requirements, in return for some type of a public benefit. And the public benefit is really defined by the council. In this case, the deviations include a reduction in garage parking and surface parking, as well as a decrease in setbacks. Specifically, it varies depending on what part of the project. Is there a deficiency in garage space or parking or setbacks? The public benefit in staff's interpretation is that there's a larger area of open green space. So as you may recall, The road alignment does go through some wetland and floodplain, which requires some mitigation for that. That mitigation is concentrated in Outlot A, or this open area. So in this case, the benefit is a larger open complex of green space. One of the critical issues with this is emergency access, and staff just wants to make sure that the commission and council is aware of this. This is a long dead-end road. It conceivably would be expanded into Maple Grove, but it will still be a dead end. Right now, there's only one access point. It is intended that when Dayton Creek addition develops to the west of this project, there would be an emergency access to Brockton at that time. Additionally, there's an existing farm road that can serve as emergency access, although the existing culvert is not sized appropriately to support fire trucks. Another option is the future Three Rivers Park District regional trail that could be driven on, but once again, that would not likely support fire trucks. So this is just something that staff wants to make sure that the council and the commission is aware of this. So this is a project blown up, and as you may or may not see, I cannot. This plan kind of shows the number of units in each building, and I'm not going to repeat it, but this is also included in the packet. This is the preliminary plat. So the preliminary plat shows 3 lots. You have lot 1, block 1, lot 1 and 2 of block 2, and then outlot A, which is the open space. This is a grading and drainage plan. The intention here of showing this is just to show what the grade differences are. The buildings are going to be fairly level, but then it drops off into kind of a wetland that goes along Interstate 94, as well as wetland and floodplain that go into Outlot A. Now, what does not show on this plan is the regional trail that will go on the back side of the townhomes here, and then up along the street. Here's the landscaping plan. And this is also, this is difficult to see just because of the scale of the project, but generally there are numerous existing trees that cover this area that would be removed. There are a few trees that will be preserved kind of on the outer edge of the project area. And then a rendering of both phase 1 and phase 2. So here we have phase 1, which is the approved 180 unit apartment building, and then the phase 2 project. Renderings of the building. So again, what this project is, or what we're talking about tonight, is both the preliminary plat and the site plan review. The site plan review is a review of the actual building design, or the architecture, as well as landscaping and general lot layout. This is a clubhouse. And just for orientation wise, the clubhouse is at this location here. And then another rendering of the winter scene of Outlot A. So I'm giving more of a brief introduction because I believe that this is still fairly familiar to the commission. And again, the developer is online. We have the architect here to answer any questions.
One question for staff. The road coming in from Dayton Parkway is going to be a public street, correct?
Yes.
Just to understand the financial of it all, that developer is constructing that all?
No. So the city has agreed to construct essentially from Dayton Parkway to the property line of the development at the point for which the developer applies for
phase 1 and 2 development, or
either one. So just back up a little bit. There's been some discussion with the developer of, are they going to start with phase 1 or phase 2? And I believe it's phase 2, but it's the option is for the developer. The city would build the section of road that goes from Dayton Parkway across the city's property to the beginning of the project at the time which the developer applies for building permits for 150 units. So whether that be the apartment building, which is 180 units, or 150 units worth of the apartments and townhomes on the south side.
Right. Yeah, just some risks for the council to consider is, markets can change, and once you put that road in, you're committed to this plan.
Any other questions or initial comments?
I guess I do have a question for staff. You're saying that there is overall for parking, my question is related to parking. Overall, the parking exceeds the required number of stalls, obviously short in a couple areas. For Lot 2, they're short 32 garage stalls, and for Lot 1, they're short 54 surface stalls. Has staff had a conversation with the developer on if they see that this might be an issue, if there's other developments in the area that they have done that are not meeting the minimum requirements of parking, if there's a study as far as the actual number of parking stalls that are used in a development of this size? Just want to get away from parking issues being persistent in the future. Even if the overall development is fully parked, it might be a convenience factor where there might be parking issues in the future. So wondering if you've had those conversations.
Not in-depth conversations, and a couple of points. One is, I believe in the staff report, I do have an error on the parking calculation. I haven't figured out where that is yet. I know one of the shortage is on Block 1. This is more the townhome projects. The city code requires that for townhomes you have a 2-car garage as well as 2 parking stalls and a half stall for guests. Where the Lot 1 is short is that there's not that half parking spot for guests. So if we're short, there's, I guess, the fallback is on-street parking as well as parking at the clubhouse.
Yeah. Are these roads wide enough for on-street parking? I don't think they are.
I believe these are standard street widths.
Yeah. One question that just to alleviate Jeff's concern a little bit is our multifamily parking ordinance is overly burdensome and has been that way since I've been on the commission. To put it in perspective, there's 482 bedrooms. The parking stall per bedroom is 1.8 stalls per bedroom. I think we're going to have enough parking. And even in the flats, the concern that John brought up about the area that's least deficient, it's still 1.2 stalls per bedroom. So the parking doesn't really concern me too much when I looked at it that way.
Yeah, and if I may,
And Ben, if you could introduce yourself and your name and address.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Delwich with Cost Wilson Architects, 1301 American Boulevard East, Bloomington, Minnesota. Commissioners, Mayor, thanks for having us here tonight for the second phase. Just real quick to address the parking concern, this is a real big sort of design driver for us. And you'll actually notice here the civil engineering plan is a little bit different than the current architectural site plan. And a big reason for that is the parking itself. So the development on the south that we're calling the flats has 1 stall for every apartment unit. The one that we're calling the Cove, that's the middle one, that has 1 stall for every single bedroom. So a 2-bedroom gets 2 covered parking stalls, and then the townhomes, each townhome gets 2 covered garage stalls and 2 surface stalls. We do recognize that with the parking layout and these tuck-under garages, some of the exterior spaces can only go to that particular resident who has that particular garage stall. So we've tried to position guest parking stalls throughout the developments to account for guest situations. I really do feel like we have enough. In our current plan, the clubhouse, which we were very concerned about the parking there, we've increased the amount of parking on the clubhouse quite significantly. I think we're up closer to, I think we're at 48 or 49, as well as we're hoping to propose some parallel parking right across the street from the clubhouse. We would keep within the existing pre-platted right-of-way, but we would just extend the width of that road to provide additional parallel parking outside of that clubhouse if there's a bigger event there or if there's just any spillover. So we've been very mindful of the parking. I agree, I think we have enough, but we've been trying to very strategically position it because for us, we have to work, the developer has to live with it after, and they need to make sure they have enough stalls. So just one more quick note on parking. All of our parking stalls that are in front of a garage are the required 20-foot depth. The ones that do overhang a curb, much like phase one, we limited those to 18 feet. But the standard parking stall where a garage is in front of that, those are all the 20 foot.
So is it 20 feet from the garage door to the curb?
24 feet from the garage door to the drive aisle.
24 feet from the,
Or, sorry, 20, I apologize. 20 feet from the garage door to the, yeah, and you'd have a little bit, the garage door's on the inside of the wall, so you get 6 inches, give or take.
that was kind of one of my questions. That's probably my biggest concern about the parking, when you start parking vehicles, because these townhomes are going to have garbage cans, I'm assuming that roll off and all that kind of stuff too. 20 feet can fit cars and small SUVs, but it doesn't fit bigger vehicles without something hanging out into the street or hanging out into the driveway.
Well, and I would say a standard parking stall for kind of most of the cities around is 18 feet. And so I think the 20 feet does account for it. I don't disagree with you, and I think we have a solution to accommodate that if we
How
need
wide
some
is the
additional
drive aisle?
24 feet. So it's, 20, 24, and then 20. We've, since this plan went out, gained a few more feet in depth. We were really fighting from the north-south direction, especially to get some land between the Cove neighborhood in the middle there, and then where that drive lane comes in. And we've been able to pinch our buildings down 4 feet each, so long story short, we got about 10 extra feet of wiggle room in depth to increase those if we needed to. And the townhomes as well are really constrained north to south too much.
How wide are the typical driveways?
Typical driveways would be 20 feet wide for a 2-car. And then it's 11 feet designated for a 1-car garage going into any of the other buildings that isn't a townhome. So the parking stalls there are actually, in fact, 11 feet wide, just because you got garage doors and space on the sides of them. But yeah, if we felt like parking was a little too constrained at the 20 feet, ultimately we have some room to pinch everything to the south. We were thinking a little bit more land between what you're seeing there now, the Cove neighborhood on the sort of the northeast there, and then the buildings on the south. But if a few feet more go to parking and some goes to green space, I'd see no issue with that.
I think the more depth you can get in those driveways, the better.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you're trying to get as much as you can now, but that would just be my concern is, most vehicles would fit, but the vehicles that don't fit are going to be then making that drive aisle narrower too if they're sticking out a little bit.
Peter, Jeff, do you have a feeling or on that? I'm good to do it. I just want to make sure that that's kind of what.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with Darren's comment of a little bit wider would be better,
In particular on the long drive aisles.
Yeah.
On the south end.
Yeah.
I've driven through a few of these neighborhoods with my smaller pickup truck, and it's tight if you're not used to doing it.
Yeah. And they are essentially driveways
Yep.
in this condition versus what a standard parking stall is kind of the gray area we're playing with there. So again, we did find the extra room for it. So I think we could accommodate that update.
Yeah, I'm just kind of studying the, probably not the right plan, but it seems like some of the spots where there is, and I think I made this comment in one of the previous phases, but some of the spots where there is some green space, maybe consider increasing the length of a few stalls for truck parking there as well, just as an option, especially as you get further in, out towards 94. There's a couple of the ones around the triangle, maybe make, the first two smaller and then that last one deeper, or last two deeper. Just to help alleviate some of those concerns, because, if I'm driving a truck every day, I don't want to hang out in the drive aisle, but if that's the truck I got to drive, I might choose to park it over there and walk to where I live.
Sure.
The other thing is, that if that's a truck you drive every day and you know you're driving that every day, you might not choose to live in this area, right?
But you might not have a choice if you're a contractor and they give you a truck.
That's true as well.
And thinking about the type of people who might be renting an apartment like this, it might be a foreman or something where they have to drive a work truck.
That's very true.
People have trucks.
Yep.
Do we have any more questions on parking, or before we?
I think on the parallel parking, I think it's a great idea to figure out a way to put it in there and show it even on the roadway.
Yeah, and so to be clear, it is actually in our updated architectural site plan with the parking numbers, so you should at least be able to access what that'll look like. Kind of based on these comments, we'll get like the additional driveway depth in there. The civil engineer will take all those comments, plus some of the engineering ones from Jason, get those updates in there and get their stuff matching up. But the architectural plans do show that parallel parking as well. And I think it was 20 additional street parallel parking stalls.
Okay.
We did also, just for, again, kind of that main drive, especially between the two rows of buildings on the south, really felt like a lot of parking without much breaking it up. We've since then been able to put 2 units in we've been able to put units in there to put green space out in front, so we have more breaking up of the long masses of parking in the updated plans as well. So just a little bit more kind of favorable from a neighborhood standpoint, at least in my opinion.
With regards to the clubhouse is serving these 271 or 3 units, correct?
It is. I think there's some ability for the 4-story apartment building to use it. They'll have a lot of the same features.
Yeah,
they'll
they'll
also
have
have
their
a
own
pool,
amenities.
they'll have everything, but if there was a bigger event, it would be for use of that building as well.
I don't want to necessarily redo your whole plan here, but was there some thought of why we put the clubhouse in the far northwest corner versus making it a little more centrally located, or even on the southwest corner?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, there was a lot of thought there. It was at one point up where that L-shaped building is on the northeast there. It was there for a while. So yes, we had a lot of thought. Obviously, kind of centrally located for Phase 2 made sense, but we did really think about it as the clubhouse for all 650 units, including that building way on the north. So we do feel its current position is actually centrally located.
What's going to be in the clubhouse?
So standard clubhouse amenities, club room, game room, just various party rooms.
But each of the other phases are going to have their own amenities too, though. That's where I guess as a resident, it'd be better if it was centrally located, but, I don't know if how that all works with your plan. It's a really nice looking clubhouse in Big, that's what I was wondering.
I don't, we've been around that one a lot, so I definitely see the arguments for the other positions, but I think.
And not to, if this is part of the overall plan of the neighborhood and the other residents in the apartments are using this, I'm fine with where it's located. I think as a side conversation, we should have a conversation as a planning commission at some point of when there's a clubhouse or a neighborhood pool or something that we do want it centrally located. Just for future, something for a
Well,
future
yeah,
job.
when they came in for concept plan the first time around, that's the challenge with these really big projects.
Yep.
You got 3 phases. Our entire intention was on phase, well, I shouldn't say entire, but 80% of the discussion was on phase 1.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
yeah, and this one itself is broken
And I
into
think that
3,
this
so-
clubhouse ultimately is just going to serve this area, I'm assuming, too, because each of these properties could be sold off separately, too. And they're not going to be, you know, they likely won't be intertwined forever unless there's some easements put in place or some agreements put in place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at least the current plan is to have one shared ownership entity at least, but yeah, you're right. Things
Yeah,
change.
and maybe it all sells in
You
one big
know.
bundle, too.
Yeah. It is yeah, it's a valid point, I think. Where it is right now, it allows for a little bit of, because just the approach to this development, it would be the first thing that you see. So we wanted it to be a little bit of a statement piece in entering the neighborhood.
There are some good positives worth
So
looking at,
that's
too. It has
another-
great views of the open green space.
So that's a really, actually a tremendous point, maybe the first and foremost. The current location of that is up, kind of perched on a hill. Everything really drops off there. We're thinking about an infinity edge pool. So the positioning of it currently right there on the site offers some pretty extensive views and in that regard too.
And part of this site, like part of why I don't mind where it is that open space behind it. You know, if we were putting a residential neighborhood behind it of even a similar product, but they can't use it, that's where I have the hang up with it. So
Mr. Chair, would you have someone that would like to speak?
We haven't opened the public hearing.
Oh.
It's the applicant.
it's the applicant.
Oh, well, that'll work then.
Yeah. Michael, would you like to join us?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Hi guys, happy day. Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to respond. You guys are speaking about the location, and I think I just wanted to echo what Ben said, that we went through a great deal of several sessions looking at the location and how to position it. And as you guys remember, even 2 years ago when we were talking about a concept, that beautiful area that unfortunately is not buildable, is not developable in terms of quote habitable square footage, but becomes this multi-purpose functional area just to the west of this. And I think it is set up in such a way that it can operate and become a central neighborhood destination for all 600 and so residences, and frankly, you know, offering food and beverage and you know, some amenities that come with the, you know, scale of our neighborhood, right? If we were doing this and designing that building for 200 units, what you're seeing, you couldn't really even afford it divided into the 200 and some. But when you start doing 600, and so we've really made a special destination that's very visual, it's beautiful, and as you come down into the neighborhood heading south, it's very focal, so you really have an instant sense of space and place and sort of arrival. And then you have all of these, you know, slightly different rental product that wrap in and around it, and so we really, anyway, we're excited about its location and then its proximity. You'll notice immediately to the west, you know, we've worked hard with Three Rivers, as has, you know, bringing in this regional trail, and that runs right along the back side. So I think a lot of energy went into really making that become that central, very iconic and very noticeable sense of place that sets you into the Parkway neighborhood. And then whether you're in the 4-story product, the 2-story townhomes, everybody will have an opportunity to utilize the amenities of the facility.
What can you guys tell us about the phasing here of is it, once you break ground, is it the idea that you're going to be just going the whole time through all the phases? Are you going to move from phase flats to townhomes? Or
No. Yeah, great question. I think, you know, similarly as we've spoken in the past, you know, one of the fundamentals of our building, because we do have 600 and some, is it's a multi-year, multi-phase project, as has always been the plan. And we're tying the delivery of construction on an annual basis to be very much tied to the existing demand matrix of, how many people are in the area, what is the demand for these kinds of rental products. And so in short, the answer is if we're keeping pace at about 120 to 150 units annual, right, then we're kind of in a nice pace. And so what we think is happening right now in the what does this mean square one, Ben and the team are going to work towards building construction documents for the area, what is phase 2, right? And we think that those will be able to close and start construction in September. And then what we show as phase 1, because of just the simple duration of how long it takes then to produce construction documents, we wouldn't be able to build what you see as phase 1 until, call it November, and it just doesn't line with when we can deliver it. So phase 1, which is lot 1, block 1, is very likely to be a 26 coming out of the ground. And what you see under phase 2, we're very, very deeply involved in bringing those to construction documents such that that we can come in and be getting building permits throughout the month of August, with the idea of breaking ground and actually physically on site in September.
So you're building the townhomes first?
No, of phase 2, yeah, we've got the 3 different components: the townhomes on the left,
Yep.
on the west of the road, and then to the right, it would be the lower section, and we very likely would be starting with the 25 unit buildings that run along our southern border,
Okay.
and there's 4 of them. And then we would do the 38 plexus, and then up into the cove, and then likely the townhomes on the west will be perhaps the last of those 3 portions making up phase 2.
Okay. So the clubhouse, the way it currently stands, would be constructed with the townhomes in that phase?
Yep, correct.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions at this time?
I should also just suggest, don't take that as in stone, as though we have to have all 267 to bring that building online. We're gonna do that, kind of as soon as we have to finish the underwriting on it, and because we're building a structure that's going to sit there for a long time, and it's based on 600 and some units of traffic flow. We want to be able to do it when it's most practical, but it may occur sooner than the completion of the townhomes.
Right, but regardless, it should, well, I guess from my perspective, it should occur at least in conjunction with the townhomes, meaning versus you building the townhomes and then waiting until, more units come online off this site.
Right. No, we're not
Got it.
doing. No, we're good. Our first bite is going to, remember, we have a trigger of 150 that we need to have in place and moving towards vertical construction in order for both of us to trigger the construction of the road. Okay, so so we've evaluated and gone a little bit into the market. Remember, we just got through entitlement only last week, but what the market, it would be very likely for me to say that we're having very good feedback on the flats, right, which is 176 units, and we like that both because number one, we like interest in the from the financing markets for the product that we've developed for the last 2 years, but also the fact that by us securing those units in the near term, it also meets that immediate threshold of moving towards 176 units, which is well above our 150 minimum threshold. and therefore further reducing the risk for everybody that the roads are, that all of those investments are very sound on the public side because of the units that we're bringing underway. So summary is the flats are the most likely product. Ben is working on getting construction documents that would allow ultimately for a submission for building permits in August and coming out vertically or at least horizontal improvements starting perhaps in September. And that would be in area 8A as an apple that we refer to as the flats, 176 units.
All right. Any other questions, comments? I think at this time, Michael, we're going to open the public hearing. We may call back on you guys in a little bit. So
Sounds good.
So at 7:15, we're going to open the public hearing. If there's anyone here for comments on this, please come forward.
Hi, it's me again.
Can you state your name again?
Marcia Grover, 11320 Fernbrook Lane, Dayton. I just want to say I'm, as an observer only, I'm a little concerned about the lack of parking also. Remember, we have winter 6 months out of the year, at least, and you get big snowbanks along the roads. If you're a young couple living in the apartment, you got a 2-bedroom apartment. It's Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you've just moved from out of town, out of state, and your parents are coming to visit, and you're really happy to see them because you haven't seen them for a while. And they pull in with their suitcases, and of course, they always bring extra goodies for you guys. There's no place to park. Everybody else is having a little Christmas or Thanksgiving shindig too. And you got snowbanks on both sides of the road, so that little road there is going to be narrower. And here's your mom and dad with all their stuff, and they're hauling their suitcases and everything along the road and trying to get to your place. Snow all over. Or maybe you're having a Super Bowl party, and you've invited 4 couples up to join you. But guess what? There's a lot of parties going on that day, and there's no place to park, and your friends have to park in the road. And somebody else is blocked in now, and they're calling the cops, and your car's getting towed, and it's just a fiasco. I think they need more parking spaces just because those people are going to have guests.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online for this one?
Yeah, if anybody's online that wants to speak, use the raise your hand function and we will unmute. I'm not seeing any hand raised, Mr. Chair.
All right. With that, at 7:18, we will close the public hearing. Any more questions or comments for the applicants at this point? All right. Any further discussion on this?
I think Ms. Grover brought up a little bit of a point that I always make sure that developments are addressing is snow removal. So there is a lot of hard surface out here. We do get snowy winters. Does the city of Dayton have a required snow removal plan or designate on site plans where snow removal should be located? Just questioning if that's ever addressed or if it should be addressed.
It should be addressed, and it has not. So this will be our 3rd apartment building that we've seen constructed. We've just not had a lot of experience with that, but you bring up a very good point.
It's not uncommon that snow removal's trucked away too.
Right.
Yeah.
Some cities will have requirements for showing on site plans a certain percentage of the plan being used specifically for snow removal. And then we'll also have some standards in there allowing for some parking to be able to use that for snow removal if there's ample parking on the remainder for meeting minimum requirements. And then if that can't be achieved, then it should be hauled off-site. So it's pretty expensive to haul it off-site. Most people will do everything they can not to do that, so they'll push it wherever they can. You also want to make sure it's not being pushed in sensitive areas for, wetland protection and things of that nature as well. So maybe something that staff should look into is snow removal plans, especially if we're going to be looking at more denser developments coming up in the future.
Yep.
I'll just kind of echo here some of Paul Crossland's comments too, that this project, a lot of compliments to the developer. It's a very attractive project with lots of glass. It's pretty unique looking compared to most flat / townhome / apartment developments. This is kind of a unique how it's a mix of product types. One thing that note too that, it kind of crossed my brain when I was looking at this, but it ultimately became not a concern, is that, this code was written mainly for 3-story buildings, but I guess it's important to note that 77% of these units are 3 stories in this phase, and obviously the other phases are all 3-story plus, so that kind of alleviated my concern. And part of the reason there's 2-story here, those townhomes are in an area where there's a high water table, and it's just difficult to go below grade. Parking, I think, well, with snow removal, that's not, on this particular site, I agree with what Jeff's saying, it's good to have some code to it, but with this particular site, it's not much of a concern to me. There's so much place to put snow. There's a huge floodplain area that it could be put into, and so I'm not too concerned about snow removal. I'm not concerned about parking. I'll just reiterate, I'll take that back. As long as we feel comfortable the stalls in front of the garage doors can fit vehicles, so the better you can get closer to 22 feet, even better. There's plenty of parking. There's 1.8 stalls per bedroom. I mean, that's a lot of stalls. That's way more than typical of what I've seen in other rental developments. So that's not a concern of mine. I think it's a great, attractive looking project.
I guess to echo on the parking, I mean, I just took some measurements on the roadway there. That's almost a 36-foot wide curb-to-curb roadway based on what I was seeing in the plans. And even with windrows of snow on both sides without adding parallel parking, that's still a really wide road for what this is. Now, sure, if people are parked parallel and they're trying to get delivery trucks in there for move-in day and whatnot during a snowstorm, that may be a concern, right? But couple all that together, and if they add in the parallel parking spots like they said they would, that helps alleviate a lot of that. The two things that I was going to bring up, and more so cognizant of our neighbors to the south, there were some comments that weren't addressed just from Maple Grove in here and just tying into Maple Grove. Wanted to bring that up as more so for the residents that we did reach out and to the neighboring cities and asked for some input and got some feedback and working with those, and I don't think those comments are outrageous or would change much that we have here. They expressed a lot of similar concerns that our staff has been bringing up in the past regarding access to the site, which there's not much to, can't change much on that. I'm also guessing, based on the type of units and the types these are with, in regards to parking and other things, the length of the driveway. I think, Darren, you threw out 22 feet. I feel really comfortable with 22 feet as kind of the standard. Would I like to see more? Sure, but I feel really comfortable at 22. I think that's all I really had. Had to add.
We closed the public hearing.
Yes, we did.
With that being said then, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the Parkway neighborhood and the site plan.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from Darren and a second from Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 3-0. All right, next item, old business, Legacy Woods zoning map amendment.
Excuse me, we're ahead of schedule here. Okay. So Legacy Woods, previously known as the Shaney North project, it's located on North Diamond Lake Road, north of Laura Lake and right up against the boundary between Dayton and Rogers. The project altogether consists of about 104 acres. The proposal is for 10 lots, roughly between 5 and I think it's 20 acres in size. Currently, the property is zoned A1 agricultural. The proposal is to rezone it to A3 agricultural. As the commission may recall, the council recently adopted an A3 district. The A3 district is intended to have a density of 2 units per 20 acres, roughly 1 home per 10 acres, with a minimum lot size of 1.5 acre net acres, so 1.5 acres of high ground. This project meets all the criteria of the A3 district. And just to kind of explain the story a little bit, so on the left here we have the zoning map. The council has kind of adopted a boundary of the properties that would qualify to be rezoned as A3, that is shown on the map to the right. The parcels that are outlined or colored in are those parcels that are 20 acres or more. So that, again, the idea is if you have 20 acres, you could divide that for 2 home sites. The project area is highlighted in kind of a reddish color. And here for the preliminary plat again, the A3 district requirements is a minimum lot size of 1.5 net acres, so net being high ground, so excluding any wetlands or low ground. The 1.5 acres should be large enough to accommodate both a house, a well, and a septic system, and an accessory building. The minimum lot width is 140 feet. In the case of Legacy Woods, the smallest lot is 3.1 net acres, so it's twice the minimum size of what the A3 district requires, and then 264 feet in lot width. So again, close, not quite twice as wide as what the ordinance requires. And again, this is 10 acres with a density of 2 homes per 20 acres. With the A3 district, there is, I'm going to refer to it as a menu of items that the developer is required to choose that would assure that at some point in the future, this development could be re-subdivided to provide sewer, urban sewer and water. This project as it is will be on well and septic. The project I won't repeat this, but of the 5 items, the developer is choosing to ghost plat the property as well as to identify land characteristics that would require or that would support future urbanization. It's a little difficult to see, but the map at the left is the proposed 10 lots that are of acreage size, and then the ghost plat is shown to comply with the R1 district. What's a little difficult to see, there's some shading here that shows the steep slope. So good and bad with this project, it has topography, and it really makes this property a very unique and beautiful property to work with, also very complicated to develop. So although this is 104 acres of land, it's much of it is wetland, and there's a lot of topography that would where it's impractical to develop it for sewer services. This is a map where we have our sewer plan that's overlaid on this, or sewer plan from the comprehensive plan. What this is indicating is our thought, or the city's thought on how sewer would be extended through the project. Now, this is from our 2040 comprehensive plan. It's fairly generic as far as the route that the sewer would go. But what this is showing is that it's practical that sewer would be located likely along the streets or alongside property lines. This is something that really wouldn't be described in depth until water or sewer becomes available. This project is within, I believe it's the 2050 sewer plan. Referring back to the Ghost Plat, the 2040 comprehensive plan also includes areas that are shown as Greenway Overlay District. Within those any area that touches a Greenway Overlay District is required to be developed as a conservation plan unit development. With the conservation PUD, the intent is to preserve corridors of green space. So that's on a different slide. But also what is shown here is the Shoreland District regulations, or the Shoreland District boundary for Laurel Lake. Although our zoning ordinance has requirements for densities and lot sizes and lot areas, all that, the Shoreline District, which is based on DNR regulations, supersede what the city has. So it's difficult to see, but what you'll see here in the Ghost Plat is you have roughly 15,000 square foot lots and then 20,000 square foot lots that are within the Shoreline District. With the Ghost plan, and this is something that we're going to look to have it updated. The road that would go through here is an extension of Thicket Lane, which is currently dead ends at this point and then continues to the north. This does not meet the spacing criteria for Hennepin County. The comments from Hennepin County is that when this area redevelops with sewer, this intersection would have to be eliminated and moved to realign with Xanthus Lane. So our thought is that the street, right now we do have right-of-way that goes through here, although there's topography that makes it impractical to build a road here. Our thought is that the intersection with Xanthus, or the street with Xanthus, would hook around this existing wetland and then onto Thicket Lane. Okay, and then here's the conservation PUD that I was thinking of. So the green hatching is the Greenway Overlay District that's shown in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And again, the intention is that any property that touches the Greenway is required to be developed as a conservation PUD. With the PUD, the intention is to preserve sensitive areas. In this case, there is a large wetland complex along the south property and along the north property. What staff is recommending is that there be a conservation easement that's dedicated to include the wetlands as well as the wetland buffers, and then a connection point between the two. This line here generally follows the topography line. I'm going to say it's somewhat arbitrary, so I would be looking for comments from the Planning Commission if this can be improved or changed or just left as it is. With the conservation easement, again, staff is recommending that this be a city conservation easement. The reasoning for that is if it's city controlled, that is something that we can exclude from our net density requirements for a Met Council calculation. So when we start working on the 2050 comprehensive plan, the intention is that everything, well, I shouldn't say everything, but much land that is developable has to accommodate a density of, or a net density of 3.5 units per acre. You can exclude land that is included as wetland or land that is city controlled, such as city easements. So if it were a private easement, that would not count. Questions?
What is the net acreage of the site today if you take out the steep slopes and wetlands?
Oh, that I do not know.
I was looking in the packet and not seeing it.
I don't think it's there.
A question maybe more for Jason. Looking at, potential for future sewer, did we ever look at potentially looking down the backside or the backside, running sewer down the backside of these?
Like through the rear yards?
Yeah.
We haven't looked closely at how it would get through the site. The site, going north from North Diamond Lake Road, there's actually a large incline and then a decline and then another incline through there. So it may be practical to get sewer up to, I'll just say, the northernmost portion of Laurel Lake. Beyond there, probably going to be a lift station and force main to service it. Otherwise, your gravity is going to be so deep through there. So could be under the roadway, could be through the backyards. We do have plenty of space to work with, so I think there's some flexibility there.
And I guess that the reason I bring that up is based on where that conservation easement is compared to like the ghost platting, and what that, making sure we leave enough room there if it needs to be a D&U along outside the conservation easement, I guess.
Sure.
Something to consider.
If we put this conservation easement in place, what does that decrease the net area to?
That hasn't been calculated. So the line on here, I'm going to say there's a rhyme and reason to it, but it is somewhat arbitrary. So generally speaking, it follows a topography line.
Right, and that's, I guess, what my brain was. I don't think we're going to gain much if we make it smaller or bigger, and so that's why I was curious if it was calculated and how much play we had, and if it actually meant something.
There's a lot of play.
Yeah, Commissioner Brown, I think just to answer your question or to elaborate a little bit on it, I think the intent of the expansion of the conservation easement area to that area that's not included within the wetland was to attempt to satisfy some of those requirements of the conservation PUD, which includes kind of a contiguous corridor of wetland or conservation area. And that area was essentially kind of just a recommendation of, if you include this boundary, it would essentially make that area contiguous as one, so.
Right. Yeah, I'm game for making it contiguous. That makes sense. The question is, do you push that line a little bit west or east? And I don't think we're going to gain much from a density perspective, but it probably doesn't matter, but. I don't have any more questions for staff, do you guys?
You should add the conditions also recommend a trail along North Diamond Lake Road.
An easement for a future trail.
Easement.
Yeah.
So right now, there's nothing to connect the trail to, so this would be eventually built, but it's difficult to predict when.
I guess I should word it correctly. Similar to other developments that go on, we make them contribute to the park fund if they're not putting one in. Is that the case here?
Yes, so
Okay.
they would pay full park and trail dedication fees.
Okay, just making sure, the easement's one thing, but to fund a piece of it as well. Perfect.
I should add, so the previous, I should say, the 2040 and the 2030 comprehensive plan did show a neighborhood park on the north side of Laurel Lake, as well as internal trail system. This was reviewed during the concept plan by the commission and the council, and neither the commission or the council were supportive of that. The park commission did recommend a neighborhood park.
If I recall correctly, we the planning commission, weren't necessarily supportive because it was going to be difficult to access.
It's difficult to get to,
Yeah.
yes. So this project will have 10 homes, Thicket Lane I believe has 10 homes. It's not this is not going to be a well-traveled street.
Let's see. What's the average lot size on Thicket Lane? Just ballpark.
Roughly 9 to 10 acres.
So,
Yeah.
so from a park's perspective, I mean, these people live on their own park.
It's a bingo.
So, any other questions, comments?
I have a question, but I think it's kind of going to be related to staff and the applicant, so I guess when the applicant comes up, but has the city conservation easement, there's some language to it yet, or and any concerns? I know the applicant brought up some questions before about what can you do in this area if we make it bigger, like mowing. Has some thought been put into that, of how we can craft it and still meet the purpose of it, of excluding it from density?
Sure. So we have not drafted an easement at all. I think we've worked with a few others that are in Dayton.
Yeah, not specifically for this development has one been drafted, but typically conservation easements is required by the ordinance. They're required to be placed over all wetlands within developments, and the conservation easements typically just mimic the allowable things that you can do in a wetland. And there are opportunities for personal, I think, unimproved 4-foot wide trails that can be kind of pathed out through that. So there are some opportunities for improvements if they'd like to do that, but really the intent of these easements are to maintain the natural state.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was curious to know, what communications have when the applicant comes up here. And I'm mainly concerned about the upland areas that are in the conservation easement, not the wetlands, because I'm assuming you're not going to alter them anyway.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Zach Brown with BK Land Development, 13311 Arrowwood Lane North, Dayton. I do have a few comments on the wetland sketch you guys have. If I can go over the map and just kind of point out what I'm thinking, it might be easier.
For
The one, yeah, that one
this
right
one?
there.
Okay.
So a lot of these homeowners they're paying a premium to have these private lots, and some of them may want to utilize like this 21-acre lot right here. There's already trails carved in from the current people who've been hunting land under the approval of the current landowner. There's trails all over. These people might want to do the same. If you look real closely, the wetlands really are quite a bit inside your buffer that you've already put out. We've done a wetland delineation. We've got it all marked out. Obviously, putting a conservation easement on the wetlands is one thing. Bringing it into the high ground and limiting what these people can do is really going to limit the the desirability, because the whole point of purchasing and paying a premium for acreage is usability. So obviously no one can do something where there's cattails, but high ground like this where there's nothing going on, I think that could be a big deterrent, and that's kind of going against what we're trying to achieve.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Not for the applicant. I guess, John, if you could, you said there's a lot of play in what could be the city conservation easement. Do we look at potentially just delineating the wetlands and saying that is going to be the city conservation easement?
You could. The general intent is to connect wetland corridor, or to create a corridor. And so in this case, what's really missing is to connect this wetland complex and this one.
Do you recall what elevation you chose for that contour to follow?
No, it fairly varies. So essentially what I was looking at is the toe, I'm going to call it the toe of the bluff, and then just following that around.
So I guess on maybe something to look into if you haven't already, but Maple Grove does have a bluff ordinance as part of their code. and where, how it's drafted there. I don't know what the language looks like, I don't recall, but I do recall when the neighborhood went in behind me along Rush Creek, they had some sort of setback bluff buffer
Sure.
thing, so there may be something there that we can mimic.
I could have swore we did something like that about 20 years ago. Maybe it was,
Parcels, or one development specific, or?
I don't remember what it was for.
This is in their ordinance of easements, so.
They effectively put a conservation easement over a bluff.
Correct, and it had something to do, with how and where the neighborhood could develop and who it, I don't remember if it was tied, how it was tied with the landowner or not. But that was a little bit different of an area too, because Three Rivers was taking that conservation easement than what we're trying to do here.
Sure. Hmm.
I think the idea here is we're trying to preserve the land from a density calculation, not from this is going to be a park, like what they were doing.
Yeah, we have similar regulations along the Mississippi River for the top of the bluff with
yeah.
setbacks, but not necessarily the bottom.
Can you go back to the conservation easement map that you proposed? Thank you. So it looks like the wetland kind of follows the 890 elevation line. And I'm guessing, John, that you're following pretty close to the 900-foot elevation line. And so the big area we're missing out that I would agree with Zach that we probably doesn't need to be in a conservation easement is that jut out up in the corner. And we're not, I don't think we're really gaining that much from a density perspective when it actually matters 30 years from now. That I'm not too concerned about it.
You mean this corner?
Yeah,
Okay.
further, a little bit further north. Yeah.
Right here.
I mean, it'd be different if we were like could quantify the math and it's like, oh, this is perfect, but I don't think we're going to gain much. I just don't think it matters that much.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that we need to have a conservation easement in. The purpose of moving this forward, we kind of got to come up with some guidance here, and that's where it's like, the 890 elevation line looks reasonable to me. And, I'm sure Zach is wondering, what's that look like? I'm just looking at a topo map, so. But basically, it's, it's running pretty much right up next to the wetland is what it's doing.
And then, if I can say one more thing too, just coming in on the south entrance off North Diamond, our intention right here is to buffer North Diamond. I mean, the county's making us do an expanded shoulder. They're not making us do turn lane, thank goodness, but there is going to be, because of the amount of traffic here, we would like to buffer this area, berming it up, planting trees, things like that. We're going to have the easement for the walking trail, but we would like to use some, and this is high ground too, right near where the road is. This is all high ground in here. We would like to use that to try and buffer, try to buffer some of the traffic, and keep this as private as it, the designed feel should be. So if we could literally just stick to what's delineated as a wetland, I think that would be optimal. Obviously, that's not my call, but.
I think the one thing that would be nice is the one area where the upland is severed by the wetlands, so that northwest corner, at least have some connectivity. Maybe it's only 10, 20 feet type of thing. Nothing crazy, but at least it's connected then, so no one can do anything in there.
Yep. No physical structures or anything of that sort.
Yep.
Question for staff, how are these conservation easements physically delineated? I'm out on this property, is it physically delineated where I know I'm now stepping into a conservation easement?
Sure. So the intention is that we would have it signed. We've not done that consistently over the years.
Would it really be necessary to assign it? I mean, if it's at the wetland? I don't want to. I bought up to the Elm Creek Park, and I don't mind looking at the sign because I'm looking at a park, but it'd be better not to have a sign there. We all know where the line
They're
is.
little, I've got them in my back here. They're not very big signs, but.
No.
Yeah.
Are they like posts? This is like
Yes.
no
Fence
mow
posts.
lines or no mow posts or
Yes, and
whatever it
so
says
the idea
beyond
is
this
to
point.
delineate the buffer, the wetland buffer.
What kind of intervals are we looking at?
We typically do it at lot lines and then any
Each lot
major
corner.
angle points.
Okay.
No specific distance though, but usually every lot line, of course, these are much farther apart than the typical.
Right.
But
Yeah, I agree that, I mean, I don't see a need to constrict this land as much as was proposed by staff. I think that connecting those two wetlands would be ideal to a point that makes sense, to the developer as well. I mean, I know what the connectivity is a good thing to have just to preserve that area. But I agree that, this is pristine land for a reason. What you can do on the property and what is actually going to happen on the property might be two different things. But I think that it could be a deterrent if a vast portion of developable and usable land is not actually usable because of an easement running through it. So I think that is something to consider. This is going to be a great development. I think this is exactly what people feel like how Dayton should be developed, keeping the rural characteristic intact. I think this is hitting it on the head in that nature, and I think that limiting some of these properties would be a bit of a deterrent for people purchasing pristine property.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Further discussion?
I guess I just echo again what Jeff said and kind of what I already said, and I think is that kind of the main open item staff is looking for direction on?
Yeah, if I could, so if the intention is to limit the easement or narrow the easement in this open area as much as possible, I guess I would suggest 25 feet. That matches what our wetland buffer area is. So that'd be 25 feet, essentially connecting this wetland along the western property line to this point.
Makes sense. I'll just say for next time one of these comes up, it would be useful to see the numbers on the density, like on a net basis.
Sure. Yep.
Just so, if things like this matter, I don't think it's going to matter on this one, so it doesn't matter, but it'd be, when you see the math, it's easier to sometimes make decisions.
Sure. Yep.
Well, I can keep it open for discussion, but I will make I will make a motion to approve the preliminary plat, the conservation PUD, and rezone the property to A3.
I will second that with the idea that staff's still going to work and tweak what that conservation easement actually is going to look like. So it's not contingent on what's being presented tonight. It's contingent on
Sure.
on
Yes.
a future approval.
You guys have enough direction and clarity on that?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion.
And that there's also the condition in there of the trail easement.
Yes.
As part of the packet.
Yep. Perfect.
We have a motion from.
Motion from Darren and
Yeah.
a second from Jeff.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I'll sustain.
All right, motion passes 3-0. Item number 10A.
10A, okay. Thank you. This is East French Lake Road, small area plan. So this is a follow-up to a discussion item that I believe Commissioner Brown brought up at the last meeting. At the March meeting, we had a concept plan for Oppidan. So this was an industrial project off of Dayton Parkway and south of 117th. The commission had directed staff to look at what happens east of this project, so essentially south of 117th, in between Dayton Parkway and East French Lake Road. Jason had put together a quick bubble sketch on the left of kind of a land use plan showing commercial along 117th, industrial expanding from the current industrial park to the east, extending 113th to East French Lake Road, and then having the 113th as the buffer area to residential. And maybe Jason, you can probably summarize this better than I can.
No, I think it's that straightforward. Yeah, it's ran 113th across and expanded the bubbles just as a potential instead of transitioning to residential to the east. Just keeping that moving across. But yeah, I guess as John had started, using the existing wetland, which is the green shaded area, or at least the general limits, as the buffer to the west, if you will, between the land uses, and then you did the roadway to finish off that buffering between the residential and non-residential to the north.
The diagram on the right is the same thing, but we have overlaid, this is the concept plan for Oppidan, as well as a sketch for a townhome project. So again, the idea is what is the highest and best use of land? Just comparing the two. And the drawing on the left shows 113th as being the dividing line between industrial and residential. The diagram on the right cuts off 113th where it is. And this would be the existing wetland would become the buffer area between residential and then industrial to the north of there. So, and again, what we're looking for is just a general discussion from the Planning Commission as well as direction where we should go from here. I do have some questions for the Commission as far as the bubble diagrams, if this is what the Commission had in mind of when we were asked to come up with some ideas. Also, what is the highest and best use of the Stensley property? This is the properties that are along County Road 81. As the Commission may recall, we've had 3 or 4 concept plans for this property for both industrial and apartments and townhomes. Each one has not moved forward for various reasons, and this is something that we've really struggled with of what is the future of this. So in looking at these diagrams, I guess the question is if there's any preference for multifamily versus industrial. Maybe I'll just start out with one question at a time. So overall, I mean, is this what you were thinking of?
I think there's some question on, obviously that road is just a fat line right now that extends off of 113th. I could even see it being flattened out more. Instead of splitting one property into 2 different uses, at least let that line dictate a little bit more of trying to make it easier for development to occur versus making property owners have to work together. I'm a little concerned about the access if that all becomes industrial like it's drawn there on the left, because it's 70 acres and so 70 acres is east going all the way down to the existing single family development, so that's a lot. But if a big chunk of that became industrial, we're talking like 800,000 square feet of industrial. And it's just, I don't know if that's the right kind of access to have the semi trucks come down, make that corner and go back. They can do it.
I guess our intention is that all the traffic into the industrial park would be coming from Dayton Parkway.
Yeah, so they go to the roundabout and then they have to come down and go back up. And just saying, if you have, it seems, I get it that we're kind of working on the assumption that the Oppidan development is dictating this road pattern, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So I failed being not at the last one, and just some of the discussions around that. I guess I've got a couple just general comments on this area that I think we should recognize. And right now, Dayton Parkway ends at 117th, and we know that. It's going to take a lot of parcels to the north to adequately extend Dayton Parkway to where we want it to be and line up with French Lake and then up to Zanzibar. One of the things I see with this industrial site that I see as a concept is actually running the road, coming off that roundabout and running straight to the east. And whether it turns at French Lake or runs up the parcel line between there and where the homes are today, may allow us to keep that larger lot size residential in southern Dayton, like we just approved in North Dayton, but allows us to better align what could be the main north-south through here, and still using the roundabout, still using the access, and really not hindering a whole lot of what's proposed up there. Is it an awkward movement to kind of go right and then left and then right and left as you go? Sure, but Maple Grove Parkway does it and it works just fine. And it runs right through large commercial areas off of 94 and Maple Grove Parkway through the Targets and the Sam's Club and whatever else right there. It works great. Large semis do it all the time, making deliveries. And so if we're having, somewhat of a industrial space here, I don't see an issue with that. It also provides, that, Darren, to your point of not forcing the landowners to split. Yeah, you're right, but it also gives us the option to then say, French Lake's going to go away, and provides a larger area where we could do a more large, medium density residential with those properties on the other side of on the east side of French Lake. I think the roadway network is important to figure out here, because
it's going to drive the land use.
It's going to drive the land use, and it's going to, and if we can figure out how to get Dayton Parkway north of 117th easily, because right now it doesn't seem like it's that feasible. But with the options I'm throwing out, give us another option that we could pivot to as a north-south route, and then maybe the one that's there today just becomes a little smaller, a little narrower, and it's just a connection to 117th. So just some things that I was thinking about looking at this and reviewing it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the other thing to consider is that, like you were saying with the roadways themselves, is that the design of the roadways also would have to help protect the current residential properties there as well. So if I am in a semi and my path of least resistance is, let's say, going south on French Lake to Territorial to try to get onto 81 somehow, that's, I think, you're deviating traffic in an area that we don't want to see it as far as semi-traffic or commercial or industrial traffic. So I agree that the roadways are going to be critical to help deviate the traffic the way we want to see it, but then also make the site usable as well. If that much industrial is going to be proposed for this site or earmarked for this site.
So Jeff, are you suggesting that then whatever street that there be no connection between the industrial development and East French Lake Road?
I think that if there is, there should be, if French Lake Road's going to be utilized, then it should make the most sense for any traffic to go on the 113th to get to 81.
Arguably would be a straight shot across versus going down.
Could be, right.
Arguably,
right,
it's not perfect.
Right. So, I mean, obviously you're going to have people who are lost and all that and go through residential neighborhoods. I think that, French Lake right now says you can't drive a truck on it anyway. I mean, I see trucks on there all the time, right? So, that's a concern I would have, but, obviously to separate industrial from your low-density residential is critical.
Personally, I would like to see this area become as much, we talked about the Dayton master plan area. I think there was general consensus of more industrial.
Yes.
If there's going to be a place that's more industrial, this is it. It's already industrial park, it's already next to it. And so the big question we have is how do we solve the access problem? Because if we can't solve the access problem, then it should become medium density residential. And so to me, it's solving the access, and unfortunately, what the Oppidan project is kind of driving it right now, and I get that if we run a road straight across, that type of industrial building is no longer going to even physically fit there. Other projects would fit there, and that those bigger industrial buildings would just shift to the east. I think that's a better development, quite honestly, for the long term. It doesn't make it easy for Oppidan, and in smaller industrial properties to the south are going to have a little bit more of a convoluted access now, but they're a lot less square footage than if the rest of it becomes industrial. I'd rather have the smaller properties have more convoluted just because it's less square footage.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is that we haven't talked a ton about either, but in the long term, this roundabout's probably not going to work there if we have all this industrial truck traffic. It's just, it's a lot of truck traffic when you got 3 million square feet, because we get the cubes at 1 million and next door and all the stuff coming down from the Graco area. It's going to be coming through this roundabout, and I've said it before, but semi trucks and roundabouts don't go good together. I mean, this one's wider, so it'll help, but so part of it is if we replace that intersection with like a stoplight, how would that reconfiguration even work, given that it's kind of a roundabout with different spurs heading straight to the southeast? Would that even work? Like if someday we decided, obviously it's not going to be a problem for a while, but it's someday when there's a lot of residential traffic and truck traffic going up here, and it's determined that needs to be a signalized intersection, how's that going to work?
I would assume it would be done. To be honest, that was originally a signal. It was switched to a roundabout for other reasons.
Yeah, it'll probably be fine for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could be accommodated. They'd have to look at stacking and other backups on there with the levels at that time, but.
I'll just say that the commercial on the north end, I'm struggling with it because you just don't have great access. And I think it's about 10 acres across all the way, is what I calculated, how you have it set up. And where's the way it's drawn right now, it doesn't have good access. It has a right in, right out on the Dayton Parkway, and then it'll have a full access on 117th. And that's a lot of land for commercial, meaning it's going to generate a lot of traffic. Mm-hmm. And so you need better access than just one egress point, because the only egress point would be on 117th, because we only have room for one curb cut between those two roads. That'd be the only egress point. Like on the east side of French Lake Road, I personally think call it medium density residential all the way up to the 117th. That little carve out of the commercial corner, same thing. How are you going to access it? That lot, I think I've measured 150 feet only, so you can't even, technically, we can't even get a curb cut there. So I would just keep that land use consistent all the way on that side. Actually, it's 300 feet. 300 feet's the width. But on 117th, the wetland is where it's a lot narrower. You don't have much at all, and you're into the wetland.
Sure. So one of the questions I've got in the staff report is specific to the east side of East French Lake Road. Is this an option for an industrial park for small businesses? So probably as the commission is aware, we have a problem with home-based businesses that have outgrown their home and can't afford to go anywhere else in Dayton. We're expanding in industrial, nothing is affordable. The businesses that are along on 113th at some point in the future are going to get pushed out. If we have an option for...
I think those businesses will be there forever, John.
You think so?
They're already buildings. You're talking about the stuff on the right, why there's all these small home-based businesses, is it's too expensive. No one's building small industrial stuff. It's too expensive. That's why they're coming and moving and running out of, wherever they can operate.
Sure. So my question is this an appropriate place for that type of use rather than residential?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think medium density could work with the narrow lot width, because you can't, it'll be able to figure out how to develop it easier when it happens.
Yeah. I think the homes on the east, I mean, I'm fine leaving them or putting them as medium density residential. I think I have a stronger opinion as you drive up and down. I drive up and down French Lake a lot, and you can look across the wetlands there, and you can see the single family homes way back in the distance that are brand new to the area, and I feel like, we're trying to jam a lot of things in here that don't seem to make sense without really taking into all the considerations elsewhere. And I think the biggest one in my mind is the roadway through here. And we have a lot more. I'm going to say this because we have a lot more control with the roadway here because this is a Dayton road and not a Hennepin County road yet, unlike Fernbrook. So we have a lot more control with how we can do things around here because it's not yet a county road. And I think we need to take that into consideration as we look to do the improvements around here. So.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to the alignment of Dayton Parkway,
Yep.
which we haven't figured out yet. I think we need to, it's a road that we want to be a nice continuous thoroughfare from the freeway up to the river road at some point, right? So I think we have to be mindful of that and not jog it around too much, more than we have to. It's just going to become a not pleasant road to navigate if we're going right turns and everything, right? We have to find a nice, easy way to curve it around or get it from point A to point B. And unfortunately, we have an offset right now between where it ends now and where Zanzibar is, and that becomes a challenge. Having the commercial here, I think we really need to figure out where that commercial pod wants to be. We've talked about it being up farther. I can't remember which road is up the next one, but
125th.
125th. We've talked about it being there. So to me, this probably wants to stay industrial in the clouded area just above where industrial is now. So we're kind of keeping that together and really looking at moving that commercial up to a central spot where we can gather things and make it hopefully more successful. I like 113th coming across. It just gives a little bit more access and surrounds this area, so you can get to East French to 113th up to Dayton Parkway, and just I think gives a little bit more flexibility. It also provides that separation between industrial and medium density. I think the medium and low density there is good and fitting. We've got the mix or the wetlands there that provides a buffer, and then if we can 113th, if that can be a wider road with a buffer on the south side or something, now you've got a break between the residential and the industrial too, so I think that would work well. But yeah, it's the alignment of Dayton Parkway is everything.
And I think
does it stay this way, or does it move like you're playing around with, or
right, and that's the big thing that I want to do with this think about this is sure we've got Dayton Parkway Plan A, but Plan A is there's a lot of parcels that need to be acquired to get there. And Plan B, which is what I've got drawn up, kind of clipping the back of the larger homes, not the homes themselves, but basically it's the shadow line of the overlay of is it the Dominion?
Oppian.
Oppian, yeah. The north-south one there, John, I have on the other side, right where it's aerial to the white, right there, if we could get a north-south road there and then tie that into that roundabout, that gives us a whole nother option for a north-south road that is, sure, it's 3 parcels here or 4 parcels here that certainly are 4 parcels, and we have how many other parcels to get the other alignment to work, right? So just holding our options open is more the way I'm thinking about this. Because if we were to go the route that I've kind of got sketched up here, we can keep French Lake as long as French Lake wants to stay the way it is from here to 125th. And it doesn't impact, it's not tied to any of that where the other route is.
Yes, I mean, we've got this development that's being proposed, which completely changes if we do it this way, right? So it's like, we got to find a way to figure it out sooner than later and decide if it's going to blow this development.
If we run the road across, it's going to blow it up. That is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to blow it up if we take half from that property and half from the property to the south? You know, and just kind of as a placeholder.
It'll blow it up because, like they're putting this building right here, they need that whole width, so the road width will blow it up, which, I mean, to me, the bigger picture for the long term of Dayton is, you know, whether the road you're talking about, Peter, becomes, I don't think it needs to even come to the future Dayton Parkway, but we've already talked about the area north of 117th becoming something dense too.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, with Dayton Parkway, these small lots are going to be succumb to future development. I don't think we can save them. And I don't know if they even want to be saved with everything that's going on in this area, to be honest, Peter. I'd rather, try to save some other lots, like on the east side of Fernbrook, for example, make sure that those are protected better. I think this area is just going to, over time, just going to get blown up and developed.
And I'm more thinking about, like, we got to think about the roadway network and what it looks like. And if you expand that out, how does that look? Because does French Lake always run at an angle? And how does that look with lot lines and everything else? And whether or not this is the main thoroughfare of Dayton Parkway, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying we need to think about the roadway network through here. And while I agree with you on some extent of the businesses on 113th, I think the businesses on 113th are actually probably ones we do want to develop.
Well, we want more businesses like them, and there's already buildings there. That's why I say it's not like they're going to, it's going to be really hard to assemble those businesses. They're all very valuable, functioning businesses.
Yeah, I just, as we put up larger, more industrial space, I mean, I don't know, on one end, it seems like we're moving too fast at the development through here, with some of them sitting vacant for so long. It's different with residential where they're selling and the product's moving. And that's the hard part that I have, especially with while we're still trying to figure out the roadway network through here.
Yeah. The demand for industrial is real right now. So if you had land, it's gonna go. And whether you want that tax base or not, or that's how you pay for these roads, and the demand can change, but it's pretty real right now with all the anticipation of more manufacturing coming back over from offshore, and it's very popular, and we have land on a freeway on a pretty popular corridor. So if we want industrial, I think we really need to figure out this road. And yeah, we might have to sacrifice a little bit of the Oppidan project, but it's the bigger picture that we need to think about is how, like we're saying, how these roads are going to go through here to create the most efficient land use. And that's the one thing I do support the Oppidan project is it creates a very efficient use, other than the fact that we have to reroute traffic down and then back up for, what could be 800,000 square feet of industrial. That's where I'm struggling. I mean, I think industrial could, if we were ready and got our stuff together and planned it out, And I'm not saying everyone wants to sell, so this might be dead. I'm not trying to force anyone to sell, but it just keep going north another, same area this area, another 100 acres north of here. And I know some people question how much more industrial do we want, but to me, it creates tax base to pay for all these problems we have on Fernbrook, all these intersections you can upgrade, and it requires very little city services, unlike homes.
You can just do like that.
That's kind of what I thought originally.
Yeah.
That's what I'd prefer, but I get it, it's going to blow up the Oppidan project, so we need to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I think if that's just 113th though, not Dayton Parkway, it's not as big of a land grab, but yes, it'll really hit.
And that's that was kind of my thought is that's kind of your current day, what we do, could do today. And then in the future, it gives you that north-south connection somewhere along those properties. I'm not saying it has to go right at the back of the homes, but it could go at anywhere in that vicinity.
Yeah.
It opens that up.
Yeah, and if we blew 113th straight across, essentially, I think it makes complete sense to put industrial, and, the area north of the pond is always going to be tough because of the pond, but I think one of the council members mentioned it. Seems like a pretty good fire station spot.
I think one of the other things just to throw out there from a planning perspective, that I don't think we take enough in when we look at residential areas, take into enough account this area all along French Lake from 117th south is District 279. It's the last undeveloped potential residential land in 279.
Where's the border?
So the border is the Dean Homes, 117th, and then it's the four properties on the left, so where John Dean is, and his four or three parcels and the one north of him, all the way down to the territorial trail neighborhood. And so thinking about just kind of high demand school districts in the area, 279 has been growing a lot in the last couple of years. And so thinking about it from that perspective, the more residential we can stick in here, in my mind, the better. Because industrial, there's a lot of other spots we can stick industrial at. We have a lot of land in 11, and we have a lot of land in 278.
With the exception that the industrial wants to be close to the freeway.
I don't disagree with you on that, but when I think this was more of the comment on the east side of French Lake and south of 113th, I think those should stay residential at some level.
Yeah. And even if 113th did go straight across, John, I'm okay with industrial going south to 113th. Now, I think it's very, very important we buffer the territorial subdivision. What's it? Territorial trail subdivision. And, that buffer obviously could be a berm, but it's also going to, it's one of the lower spots in this area when you look at the topography. It could be a big stormwater pond too that functions as the buffer down in that corner. Mm-hmm. So, either way, it needs to have a buffer. And whether that happens to be medium density residential or berming and stormwater ponds, it needs to have some sort of buffer.
Once you're done with comments, I'll try to summarize what I remember.
And, with Peter's comment on the Stencil property remaining medium density residential, I guess I'm impartial. I mean, I think it's a tough site no matter what it becomes. So I think it's okay being townhomes. It's a tough site though, no matter what. If anything, I think our zoning on that property is asking for too much density. That's one of the obstacles it's facing.
You're talking the
Yep.
I was talking these properties up on French Lake.
Yeah, you mentioned those, but I think you all.
Oh, I meant south of 113th,
Oh, got
east of the green buffer. So
Yep. Yeah, and
I
so
wasn't
I could south of 113th and east of the buffer, I could go either way with industrial or multifamily or medium density, as long as there's a good buffer between territorial trails.
the Stensley property, I agree, I think mixed use is the right use. I think our density requirements might be too much,
Too high. Yeah.
too high for what we can provide.
Is this a public hearing? There's some people
Uh,
here that want to talk.
No, it's not.
It's up to the chair.
There's some landowners over there that own these parcels, so.
I understand. It's not a public hearing. We are not going to open it. I'm going to make that call.
If I could summarize where there's a consensus and where there's not. So it sounds like there is a consensus to extend a road along this property line from this new street all the way to East French Lake Road with industrial to the north. Mixed opinions if there'd be industrial to the south of that road, but generally speaking, the consensus is that there needs to be a strong buffer between industrial and residential. There is a consensus for medium-density residential on the south side of this road, along with low density.
Or potential industrial, that's
Or-
my opinion, but
Okay.
again, with the strong buffer.
Sure, with a strong buffer of either industrial or townhomes. The Stensley property could be mixed use, whether it be just about anything. So we
I
have.
think the way our mixed use is written in that area, it's residential pretty much. I don't understand our mixed use concept in that area.
We don't have good examples to point to.
Yeah.
The question of the east side of East French Lake Road, what should that be? The answer, the consensus is medium density residential, no commercial along 117th. Is that accurate for everything? So my question for the commission is, where do we go from here? It sounds like you'd like this plan to be refined a little bit more.
I mean, seems like a big question that needs to go to council is where are they at with 113th, because we have an applicant with a development.
Sure.
plan.
So you're referring to Oppidan. So
Yep.
when Oppidan's concept plan was reviewed by the council was acceptable to it as it was proposed.
Yeah.
Did the council understand planning commission's potential concern with 113th and where that should be aligned?
Are you referring to the road? What's it proposed to be? The one due east out of the roundabout?
Correct.
Yeah, it did come up.
And so the council's opinion is that it should not be a straight shot over to French Lake Road? If they were supportive of the Oppidan
I don't think
plan.
that
I
was
watched the meeting,
discussed.
that was how I would say it. I think that there was, how to say it?
I guess the question is, did
They were supportive of the plan if that road was gonna come down,
Gotcha.
which I'm supportive of. If the idea is that road's gonna come down, I'm supportive of it. But I think that if that road comes down like it is, we need to pivot to the land to the east.
Which road? Where do you?
The way staff had proposed that road coming down, you're right, to there. If that happens, I think we need to pivot to the land to the east, because it doesn't make sense to put, 800,000 square foot of industrial and have them have the loop down with all the truck traffic and back up. It just doesn't, to me, it can be done, but it sure makes a lot more sense to go straight across, and hopefully a good development could happen in that area. It's a lot of acreage.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think from my recollection, based on that discussion on the Oppidan project, the city council was supportive of the project with the understanding that not only that last leg of the roundabout would go south into 113th Avenue, but also that there was a discussion about the extension of 113th Avenue to East French Lake Road was a possibility to make that connection. So it was kind of those two things that were hand in hand.
If the decision was to guide that residential, I believe that was the discussion, right? And problem is, yeah,
Industrial is still possible if it comes down and goes, it's just not,
it is, it's just,
there's gonna be a lot of traffic going through that road.
and that discussion should have already kind of been happening.
Yes.
This whole area should have already been. Yes.
And I guess just my point on that is, and I think Dennis, you may have agreed with me in the past, but I think this is kind of our last chance to maybe try to fix something that,
Fix what? Are you talking about the Parkway?
yeah.
Oh, geez,
I think that's
beat
it.
that thing.
No, I understand that part of it, but
I think it's what it is. It's a tragic ending.
we're,
That's what it is.
where I'm disagreeing with that is, I think we have a chance to allow us to, through here, to look at our roadway network as we come out of Dayton Parkway and what that's gonna look like. And we need to really sharpen our pencils.
Yeah, and I think we need to embrace that north of 117th is gonna be commercial or industrial. And that's why this, even 113th coming across, like Peter's suggesting, and how it hits each right lane comes up, you have just way better access when you have two access roads serving an area that's, industrial and commercial.
So direction, I don't know the status of Oppidan, if they're working on a preliminary plat. I would assume that they are.
They are.
The direction that they've been given thus far is to come in approving applying for what they submitted for the concept plan. And our discussion has been very different than what any discussion we've had prior to tonight. So if the commission would like to pursue this in more detail, I guess my recommendation would be to look at a moratorium.
One of the questions I have is, what power does the city have with Oppidan, and forget Oppidan, any applicant on the site, to dictate that this road becomes like this? How does that work?
Essentially, it starts with the comprehensive plan. So you have an adopted roadway corridor.
Yep.
That if a development comes in where that corridor is shown on the property, the intention is to build that corridor, or build that road.
Our comp plan doesn't show anything here.
No. So
And it doesn't show any of the minor roads, really.
No.
And
So
so I think part of that discussion, I think, in just my brain, is that the council would be good to know is what are our options? I mean, a moratorium, even, we can change our plans, but what can we do to make that road happen? I mean, hopefully Oppidan or whoever comes in can just work with other property owners and get it figured out, but.
If Oppidan is fixed on this building footprint, like their site's
Yeah, they're gonna
not
have to redo a
work.
different building.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't do a different building, it's just, there's gonna be 2 or 3 buildings now, especially because there's more land.
You actually do have a small area plan that does identify the east-west road along the south side of the DDL property, Oppidan.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, I have it up. It has essentially what Councilmember Crossan had sketched. I saw when you turned your computer, so looks just like that.
And why weren't we following it?
Because the land availability to the south came forth, and the direction seemed to be, as long as that connection to 113th can be made, then it was less important to be able to go east.
I remember when we talked about that availability, I know I was adamant that we needed to be talking about this already, and that was about a year ago.
This road?
Yeah.
Or,
The 113th and the land uses in particular, so we understand the roads, because the roads are going to dictate the land uses.
so Jason, you're saying that the road running from the roundabout due east is on?
It's, yeah,
Okay.
figure,
Well, okay.
yep, figure 16, so sub-area 2 that identifies it.
So would a moratorium be necessary, or more, or reach out to Oppidan saying that, like tomorrow, that, well, I shouldn't even say tomorrow, because we're just the planning commission, and the council obviously needs to be on board, but, or is the recommendation a moratorium with, given that information?
Did you say, was that the small area plan, or is that part of the comp plan?
Small area plan, I mean, it appears to be part of the comp plan.
Okay.
I mean, I'm getting it right off your website, so.
This must be true.
It's on the website. I would support trying to give us some time to make sure that that alignment is correct and that we feel good about it. Yeah. Fortunately, Optimum's far along, right? So it is going to completely upheave everything they've been planning, but it's still easier to do that now than it is to slam another building in and all of a sudden we've shot ourselves in the foot a second time in this area.
Yes.
You know, clean, easy roadways help a city function, right? So if we can get this road to go straight east, connect with East French, it provides multiple access points for this pot of industrial, provides a nice separation, and then it does not disrupt those businesses on 113th because we can tie in from the east on that, and those businesses get to maintain operation.
So your question was moratorium or not?
Yes,
What kind of formal applications has Oppidan made?
just for concept plan.
I think the most important thing is they need to understand that there's some risk because we have a small area plan that we're changing directions.
Were they
It's not
aware?
the Planning Commission.
Were they aware of that small area plan?
I don't think so.
We weren't even aware of it until 10 minutes ago.
I was aware of
I
it from
remember
yeah.
having conversations about it.
Well,
As well.
yeah, I remember seeing it. I just thought it had been taken off the plan at some point because I
Yeah.
thought we weren't, yes.
I think it was taken off consideration. I mean, that is where we started when we started talking with DDL, is we have to run a road through here, preserve right away.
Yeah.
But then the opportunity came upon us that there might be the ability to acquire right away to the south to accomplish the connection to 113th. And at that time, the idea was we have an alternate route that we can utilize.
Well, that's for utilities, right? That wasn't just,
No, it's for the roadway too.
so,
But that all kind of fell coincidentally because the property owner came in for some site improvements, so it was coordinated that way. Utilities could also look through there.
What's staff recommendation? Is it moratorium or the other route of reaching out to the applicant and talking about the small area plan? I kind of put you on the spot because we got put on the spot.
Yep, no, that's fair.
Flip it around.
Well, I'm looking at the three staff that are here.
My personal opinion would be just to confirm once that this is an approved piece of the comprehensive plan, so that this is something that we have identified as a future plan. Like Jason said, there was a chance that it may have gotten removed from approval or consensus at some point where the alternative route was kind of seen as a preferred option. And if that is the case, then we can relay this information. And just note that any non-dedicated right-of-way to any proposed Oppidan project in the future would essentially be inconsistent with this plan. So I think reaching out to them first and letting them know about this would be the first option. And even if we find out that this is an approved appendix of the comprehensive plan, then we can proceed with looking at a moratorium for a certain period of time, or at least until the study of this area is complete. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I agree with Paul that we need to look at this to make sure this is the right plan, and that's what I want.
Yep.
Because I know Peter had some nice drawings, but Peter, even like if you had a little
Yeah.
hook here, like where this went up and
Yep.
was tied in, because that would help with Jeff's concern that all the traffic is getting routed north, and, you know, this is more of a side trail now in the territorial.
Mine is more drastic, but that's what fat lines do, right? They just they help you think about things and make sure we're doing this right.
And I know that there's a chance that you guys don't have this plan pulled up on your computers. We can certainly send this out to you after this meeting wraps up so you can get a visualization of what we're seeing that we found on the website. So.
Jason, if you have any thoughts?
I mean, no, I mean, in my mind, this gives you grounds to take the approach that a road is needed here. We do have an alternate access. I don't know if that has bearing on it or not.
Yes, I mean, thought if it's in the comp plan, we can rely on that as a reason for denying the project.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that gives you the trump card essentially to tell, it's a tough conversation with Oppidan, but that's, your comprehensive plan is going to supersede anything else. And if that's giving us the direction that we want to go in as far as these street configurations, it's certainly something that we should to take into consideration and study a little bit more. So if it's Oppidan not pursuing any applications from this point forward, or if it's us needing to impose a moratorium to study it for a 6-month period, then I think that's what we need to do.
Either way, I do think that staff should reach out to Oppidan and make them aware that there's some discussion now.
It is. I mean, it's still a question of, it's clear of what the commission's consensus is. I don't know what the consensus is of the council. So the only thing I can fall back on is the concept plan for the Oppidan, which was in favor of what Oppidan wants to do.
Well, and like I said, I think the council is kind of the understanding that we would get the same answer from the 113th extension.
Yep.
But if that's not the case,
I think the connectivity to, as we keep moving north of 117th is the most important thing, like as an alternative route for commercial users, because the current path is not as conducive.
well, I'm not sure when. I mean, see, you guys, if you're gonna look at this, I'm just wondering if we should be doing a moratorium. What's the downside to doing a moratorium?
I don't think there is one. And so,
Right.
generally speaking, a moratorium starts at 6 months. It can be extended to a year. I'm thinking it's probably not going to take us 6 months. So it would, I'm sure, take a month or two to study and come up with some alternative site plan. But I think we could figure this out in less than 6 months.
The one potential downside of a moratorium is if for some reason Oppidan or someone else can work with the property owners and come up with a plan and solve it. Obviously we have our input, but they draw on paper what we're thinking and done.
Well, then we could pull the moratorium.
You could pull a moratorium.
Okay, I thought he said it's 6 months, yeah.
It's up to
It could
6
be
by
shorter.
resolution.
Up to, got it.
And then we can
Got it.
extend it. But,
Got it.
yeah. I just don't, we went through this once before, and I think at the time there's no downside to doing a moratorium. You don't want to be spending them every,
Right.
But if there's questions about the layout here, I mean, if they come to us with a preliminary, we start, unless it's clearly in the comp plan.
Yeah, is there a certain point in which a proposal reaches where it doesn't get impacted by a moratorium, right?
Well, we have a small subdivision plan that we're working on that's city initiated, that's south of the roundabout, these two parcels. So I guess if we were looking at a moratorium, I would suggest that it be east of this line, of this property line.
I mean, you could define what that moratorium is pretty specifically to include or exclude whatever areas that you want to study. So as long as there's a proper grounds to impose that moratorium, I think that's probably the right way to go.
include the property that we currently show the roundabout connecting to 113th on? I mean, that's kind of in the cards for the planning, right? So
Yeah,
seems like you'd at least include that.
based on this current discussion there and how the study is gonna go and how the results might come from that connection that might not even be necessary at that point, so.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
the hope is that I think we can get it east, but right now we're showing it coming down, and so if the study proves that, yeah, we want it to come down, we don't want somebody to come in and to say, we want to redevelop these parcels, well, we got a moratorium on everything around it, and then we decide we want the road there.
In my opinion, there may still be value in that connection.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, we may still want.
Yeah.
In fact, that is the preferred connection to the resident, or the property owners along 113th. We've had several meetings with them, and
Yeah.
they're actually very vocal about not wanting it farther to the east as the comp plan suggests.
Which I understand that, which is the exact same reason I want the rest of the 70 acres not to have the inconvenience because it's more square footage.
Well, at some point, we do have to close 113th, right? To the.
Dayton Parkway.
Yeah.
That's the reason for the alternate access,
Right.
correct? Yep.
Yeah.
That's what makes it critical to get something between those.
And so, John, I think if we're talking, it seems like there's consensus, we should maybe look at a moratorium. We could get that on the agenda for Tuesday,
Yeah,
as long as the delineation makes sense.
sure. So the delineation generally is including the DDL property. I'm going to start from 117th, coming down through here, over to this property line. And then either including this along this property line or just drawing a straight line down.
I think you should go all the way to the southern border of territorial trails and over, unless we feel the need to put the stencil property in it, which I don't know why, but.
Anywhere we think the road might want to go.
I think the only reason you want to put the stencil property in it is
Something comes out of it.
in case
Bigger
something
study.
comes out of access to their property in their benefit.
I mean, I think getting another access to that property is pretty important to the
Yes.
function of it, because getting off the territorial is just a disaster. So having a back access,
So
I mean,
then
even for
Yeah.
fire and emergency services, it'll be good to have that back access to that area.
So basically, you're going down the County Road 81, and then the western and northern boundaries of the Territory Trails development.
Well, I'm thinking also to 117th.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Up to
generally
117th, all the way up to
following this line
117th.
through here and down to East French Lake Road
Yep.
in territorial. Include non-developed residential, not residential property. So this is off the map. So we do have a plan right now for residential that's territorial growth. This would be excluded.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what Darren was talking about is the northern boundary of territorial and the western boundary
Yeah.
of territorial trails.
Sure. So this is a better one.
Yeah.
This area.
Yep.
Okay.
And since it's in current staging, it probably makes sense to grab the properties on the east side of French Lake Road just in case. I don't think we've heard anything that it matters, but,
There's one property for sale there currently, so
yeah.
it may be.
Included in the moratorium? All right, one head nod, two head nods, there's three, there we go.
We're gonna do it, we should just
Gotta
be
keep
safe.
paces.
Yeah.
Everything on this page except for territorial trails.
Yeah, basically.
So I would like a motion for that.
We'll make a motion to impose a moratorium on the area that we just discussed. Recommendation to the council.
A second.
We have a motion from Paul and a second from Darren. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
These do require public hearing, so I'm not sure when this will go to council.
The moratorium requirements.
Moratorium.
How much notice is for that?
Generally, it's 3 weeks. Well, 3-week lead time to advertise to the paper and then for the paper to publish.
Okay. We'll see it as a public hearing in May.
I'm assuming staff is gonna start studying this a little bit too
Yep.
then?
And talk it happening.
Yes. The one thing, staff, Jason too, just when you think about that road coming off, if it goes straight across, think about how that roundabout, not proposing to get rid of the roundabout just yet, but if that became a signalized intersection, to make sure that that's gonna work.
My opinion, based on where that is located, it's going to need a lot of work either way.
Yeah.
If it became signalized. All right, item 10B.
Thank you. Let's see. So this was a late addition to the agenda. Scannell had proposed a 125,000 square foot spec industrial building in, well, it was approved in 2022. I'm not sure when the approval actually started, but, and that is this drawing to the left. At that time, the market conditions did not support construction, and so the project just sat. Scannell the market has improved. Scannell is looking at building it again. They would like to reconfigure the building and flip it so that the trailer storage is along 81 instead of along Territorial. My question for the commission is there consensus for either way, to either configuration from the 2022 version versus the 2025?
Obviously, I wasn't here in 2022. Was there discussion on the rationale for the configuration of the building at the time?
Generally speaking, the consensus at the time was to avoid having trailers that were highly visible. And so we looked at King Solution as an example of what not to do along
Right.
94.
So visible from what
81.
right of way?
From
Okay,
81.
from 81. So essentially, the idea is to protect the view shed from 81 rather than the view shed from Territorial.
Yes.
Okay.
Territorial is a dead-end road.
Right, so I think if that's what was proposed and it makes sense in 2022, I'd be hard pressed to see why 3 years later it would be all right to flip it to the way that the consensus was that they did not want to see it back in 2022.
Sure. So what has changed since then is the Opus building that's next to it, which does have trailer storage along 81. And so what Scannell is asking you to do is the same thing that was approved for Opus. Now, Opus is a little different because the confinement that Opus has is an existing cell phone tower. And so the city is, or now the commission's consideration at that time was that it was reasonable to have trailer storage on either side of the cell phone tower versus pushing the building up against the cell phone tower and having trailer storage on the south side.
I mean, I could be wrong here, because it was a while ago that Scannell presented it, but I believe Scannell presented it flipped in the first place, so there wasn't much discussion on it. That's what my
I think
memory is
they-
recalling.
I don't think there was any discussion of flipping that, because it was already,
You know, there's a buffer between 81 and a railway, and, you know, I was just driving out the other day, obviously there's no leaves on the tree, you can see everything, but I personally am a bigger fan of buildings. Now, the freeway building, different story, that should have been flipped. But I'm a bigger fan of having the employee parking on the main access road to the building. I don't think it hurts or creates a huge eyesore with trucks and looking at dock doors when you're going down 81. Especially because there's quite a bit of separation. Like Turbine Pros, it's going to be more glaring because there's not much separation. There's a lot more separation with this property from the intersection. When you come down to that intersection, you see the Turbine Pros lot right now. Granted, in 20 years it'll look very different when the trees get mature, but so I'm okay with it being flipped, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
John, can you go back to the site plans? Not these ones, these ones.
think from a building usability standpoint, safety of the pedestrian vehicles pulling in, there's less crossing, right? Because otherwise you're in the current plan where the trucks are against the entry road. Now you're pulling in as your personal vehicle into the truck turning loading dock area to get around to the other side of the building. Prefer to not have a bunch of trucks along 81, but I think we're also in an industrial area. It doesn't give me a ton of heartburn to flip it. Unfortunately, there's not more buffering on this property that can be done because it is tight to those lines as it can be. But even so, tree buffering only does so much when you're trying to screen loading docks.
Does the city have any buffering requirements or screening requirements between industrial and abutting rights of way?
So generally, it's a 35-foot landscape buffer, and that applies for any arterial street, whether it's a residential development or industrial or commercial.
Are they able to get that in the pinch point on this?
Well,
right?
what's difficult with this is the railroad a
Yeah.
buffer.
I'd say no because you can't plant it.
Well, the one thing that I thought is a compromise, especially if there's people that are adamant, which I understand if you don't want the trucks facing 81, is they do have trailer parking there, is they could take away their trailer parking and they'd have a lot more landscaping and even a little berming. And I don't, how many
Part of
stalls
it.
is that? I mean, it's probably not going to be a killer because it's not a ton of stalls.
15.
And especially because we allow them to park trailers by the building too,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So my opinion is I would prefer the trailer parking on 81. The way that I get the way that the operations are drawn between the two, that's why I wanted to look at this, and it's probably easier for them to operate with the trailers on 81. I drive by the cubes almost daily. I drive by the other property with the cell phone tower, and I'm regretting some of those decisions that we made. Just having had to look at them, whether they're sitting empty or with stuff in it, doesn't matter to me. The dock doors are still ugly and ugly to look at. We've got Territorial Trail, which has Sunstone right across the street. Sunstone's not going away anytime soon. It is an industrial park. Usually industrial parks have that trailer parking towards the internal areas, not the external.
Most buildings don't front on two rows, so that's the hard part.
This does not either. It's got a railroad on the one side.
That's a good point. So just to be clear, Peter, I think you started saying that you are okay with the trucks facing 81, but I wasn't.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I do
you
not
say
like.
not okay.
I do not like the trucks facing 81. What I do get is the routing and why it may be easier for them to face 81. But I don't like it. It's just another eyesore of a building that, you know, we talked about earlier, mistakes made in the past. We talked about King Solutions, and then I brought up Cubes has been sitting there for a while, and it's the first thing you see when you come to that intersection. And I think we can do better. And it might be small, but it's a way we can do better on things we don't like about other projects.
I tend to agree with Peter on that. It's just because one building got away with it doesn't mean the next one gets to get away with it too. So I could point at other buildings all day long and say they've done it, how come I can't? Mm-hmm. And I think rationale has to take some position here to say that for whatever reason we feel that it's more visually pleasing or has better aesthetics, or however you want to frame it, that we don't want to see that parking along 81.
Okay. And then, Paul, what was your answer again?
My answer is my preference would be for the truck parking to be against the side road, not 81.
Okay.
Although I said I don't have a ton of heartburn if it did flip, but I would agree with the consensus that I would rather see 81 have nicer fronting.
So the consensus is to flip the building to have trailers parking along Territorial, not 81.
Does the code specify where loading docks have to be located?
Not visible.
More talks about screening.
Yeah.
Not visible from where the public right of way?
Well, more so from residential, but, you know, it's hard to define. So resident, you know, we were talking about the Stensley property earlier, which is on the other side of 81. That could go either way. Right now, it's just a farm.
I think it's important that the applicant talk to people and explain what this building's gonna look like. Like the building on I-94, it's an eyesore because it's like, it's unmissable. Like when you drive by Turbine Pros, you're not gonna see a ton of trucks there. It's just not, this is a 120,000 square foot building. You're gonna see dock doors, you're not gonna see trucks. When you drive by Cubes, well, maybe not necessarily now because we have a manufacturer, but what was approved is you were gonna see trailer everywhere. Because it was just to be loaded full of trailers. So I really, I mean, I guess part of it is maybe the architect here on the board, but how do you, like even I think of the one, the doors are white on I-94 too, it doesn't help. Like if they just would have made the doors the same color as the building, it wouldn't have been as ugly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've said it before too, like doing integral color precast and, you know, just some nice, simple touches to the building makes a big difference from painted precast. And, you know, loading dock doors aren't the most attractive, but you got a lot of building above. Like, what do you do with it to make it more attractive? The lighting and spacing of it. And so there are definitely things that can be done to dress that up and make sure that they understand that, okay, if we do allow them to flip it so truck parking is against 81, what are they going to do to make sure their building looks good from two sides?
You'll still see the trucks, trailers parking on that side of the building.
You will. Fences and trees are not going to cover that.
Correct.
No.
And it's just, it's too tight to the railroad. They can't even get any kind of legitimate buffer as it turns the corner on the east there, right? And, you know, get into that truck storage area, and, you know, and Darren suggested that, you know, you could put some more buffering there. That's fine, but that's only a small portion of the building.
Just to your point, Commissioner Sargent, about the screening requirements adjacent to right-of-ways, it does require that trailer parking be adequately screened from the adjacent right-of-ways, and that means that at time of full maturity for the landscaping, it is not visible. However, words matter, and when it comes to adjacent right-of-way, most of these corridors for rail are platted lots or lots of record in general. So
Right, yeah, it's not adjacent right away. But if it was flipped and the trailer parking was along Territorial, that is adjacent right away.
Correct.
So they would need full screening on that. That meets code definition.
I do remember talking a lot about that when we saw it the first time.
Okay. Well, we'll have the same questions for the council. Scannell would, if this is supportive, like Scannell would like to build this year.
Did they say why they wanted to flip it?
It works better for them. It's just,
Okay,
it's a
that's
better
all.
layout for the building. You know, it's a rectangular building versus,
I did notice that with the jog in the
Yeah.
building, that's.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
I mean, that's where my heartburn isn't too bad, because I think the property does function better with it flipped.
yes.
So then it's a question of function over aesthetic.
The building square footage change at all?
Went up?
No, it's about the same.
Yeah, went up like 3,000 square feet. So nothing to.
CEO's office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, there's a clear consensus from the planning commission, but, you know, I think there's a fairly good chance that Scannell is going to come back and propose this plan.
I want to call it completely clear. I mean, Paul's a little on the fence. I'm one way, two or the other way, and the council's got their feedback. They can figure it out.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to propose it, then
Well, and that's
come in with
just
their
it.
reasons, right?
That's just it, is we approved part of this, and I think Paul touched on it with the operations, and it works better. If it truly works better, I'd like to have a conversation with them about what can we do to make it work better for us as well.
Yeah. Sure.
That's,
agree.
I mean, that, just proposing a flip on the building, and that's like approving honestly, it's like approving one style of residential, and moving from a single family to a townhome. Yeah, it's the same density, maybe same number of garages and bedrooms, but it's a whole different product or a whole different style that we're seeing. Whole different site in this case, which is a lot of what we look at.
Well, an argument could be made that they're more in compliant with the ordinance, with the flip, the way that they want to see it flipped right now, because of the screening and of the loading docks. Right?
I guess my interpretation of your comments, if they can keep this plan and maximize as much screening, that would likely be accepted.
That and what can they do to, like again, like when you drive along 94, what makes the dock doors so ugly is they're white against the tan building.
Sure.
They just stick out. So what can they do to make
Soften
the dock
it.
doors? Obviously, there'll be trucks parked there every now and then, but this isn't the type of building where there's going to be trucks parked there all the time.
Okay.
And I guess this was brought forward, it wasn't on the agenda, so I
No.
misplaced what it was.
11B.
No, but as far as,
What I'm asking for the plan commission
yes.
to do? What you've already given, so I don't need a formal motion. If you'd like to make one, you can.
But this is a concept plan at this point, or?
Essentially, it takes the place of it. So I guess in staff's discussion, we didn't feel that it justified a concept plan because it's already been reviewed before. This is a significant change, but the main question is really, should the building be flipped or not?
And I think, and I guess where I'm going with this is in rationale, this is a big enough change that this needs a new concept plan. That's my recommendation.
I mean, the buildings change configuration, change size,
Change
flipped orientation,
Different landscaping.
different
requirements.
landscaping. They've added parking, they've added storage to the north side.
It's a new.
It's a new plan.
It's a new
This is a
plan.
new
Okay,
plan.
we can do that.
Yeah.
And whether they have to come forward with a concept plan or straight to the site plan?
Yeah.
That's up to them.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, they run some risk if they come straight for a site plan approval, but
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Okay.
So it's not as simple as flipping the building, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. It needs to come back.
Okay. But not necessarily as a concept plan. You'd be fine if they just submitted for preliminary plat and site plan review. But
I think
it
they
would
should
be
get
less.
council's feedback to make sure
Sure,
that council
yep.
feels comfortable. That would go a long way if we want to.
Yeah, I think there's enough uncertainty amongst the four of us, not knowing how Nick would vote, that it could be a risk to come back as preliminary plat.
Okay.
All right. 11A, staff updates.
Staff update. So I don't think I have a slide on this. We do not. In the packet, so the last council meeting, the council did approve a strategic plan. The copy is in the staff report. I do not have a slide of it. I guess my intention is to include this in every planning commission packet. So the whole idea of the strategic plan is these are the goals and policies that we're working towards in every project that we do. So every staff report is going to, as it does currently, is it refers to the goals and policies of how does this application apply to the 5 sets of goals that the council has adopted. And they don't always apply, but most of them should. What else? City open house is in May. I was trying to think of that and I forgot to look up
Let
the
me
date.
pull the date up here.
We'll send out a reminder. So that annually the city throws together an open house at the Public Works Building. All the departments have just tables or display tables. A lot of the community organizations also do. It's fairly well attended. Better than what I was expecting from the first year that I've attended. And it's fun. So Planning Commission will have a table once we find out what the...
Be May 14th,
May
Wednesday.
14th.
Send out calendar invite.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is all I have. I should mention the cover photo for this meeting, I can get up there, is Riverview
Yeah, I recognize that.
Riverview Villas in the Old Village. So this was reviewed by the commission. I can't remember if it was last summer or if it was before that. But this is 2 sets of 3 townhome units.
That was taken yesterday.
Yeah, a couple years ago, or a couple days ago, yeah.
There you go,
It's this week.
Yeah, you can see the balcony.
snow.
The other,
Winter.
the other building's a little farther
I'm
along.
glad
Yeah.
they added those balconies.
Yeah.
The balconies are
We're
really
gonna
nice.
have river views up there, nice ones.
Yeah.
So each month we'll try to throw on a current construction project as the cover photo.
Still prefer more windows on a corner lot, but you know, never gonna get that.
All right, any commissioner updates?
I wasn't here for the whole meeting. I feel a little guilty taking the German thing, but I'll do it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There we go. I'll second.
We have a motion from Darren and a second from Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:11.